Hello, everyone, and welcome to Picture This, the new show here exclusively on the Dill Pickle Movie Network. That's right, we are not a podcast, we are a video here and only here at the Dill Pickle Movie Network. I am one of your hosts, Dylan Randazzo, and I'm so honored and incredibly happy to introduce my co-host for the show, Mr. Chadwick Webb. Chad, how are you doing? Who are you? Tell everyone about you.
Hey, I'm doing fantastic, man. Chadwick Webb. I usually go by Chad. Dylan and I met through a critics Discord. We generally chat around on there, and we decided to start this show on his network. And we are both interested in doing a lot of fan leagues for the Movie Trivia Schmodown. That's a really big common interest that Dylan and I share, and I've played quite a few matches there, and I'm hoping to bring Dylan there. And so I've loved movies, kind of like Dill ever since I was a kid, and I haven't seen a lot of these Best Picture nominees. So I was talking to Dill about that, like, hey, I've seen this many. How many have you seen? And then we just kind of got to talking, like, you know what? Let's try to watch them all. I mean, it sounds crazy, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a long trek. I mean, I'm assuming if you've heard some of the past shows and if you saw the intro, this is a show about the Oscars. And you see at the bottom, this is 1994. So we're going with a year that was fairly, comfortable for both of us. We both had seen a bunch of the movies. You've seen all the movies from 1994 that were nominated, the 5. I have seen 3 of them. So we were very comfortable with it. So we figured this would be a great way to introduce the show, talking about movies that have really garnered a really important legacy in cinema, but also are still new enough that feel still fresh and exciting to talk about. We will dive all the way to the classics, all the way to 1927 when the Oscars started. We will be doing shows up to the current Oscars that are happening on April 25th. We will be covering it all. And beyond. That's right.
Yeah.
As long as there are still Oscars, there's still a show here. So eventually we will come to the end where we will have to wait a year to do another show.
That's going to be like 10 years from now or something, though.
Right. It'll take a long time. So we've definitely got our hands full with a bunch of great movies to talk about, but that's why we break it up month by month. We're only doing one show a month because we want to really take the whole month to watch these movies, to sit with these movies, to dissect these movies. And it's been a lot of fun just doing this first month, just getting to watch 5 movies, some that I watched 1,000 times, 2 of them I haven't watched ever before. It's been a really fun journey thus far. And so our marathon, we're 5 movies done and complete, and we are trekking along. But of course, we have to recap our 1994 journey. So Chad, you want to kind of explain a little bit of the premise of the show?
Well, sure. I mean, if we're going into 1994, look, I was like 3 going on 4. You were yet to be.
Not even a cell.
Exactly. So, we don't know that much about 1994. It's not even a memory for me, to be honest. Some of these movies, basically one of these movies, maybe 2 or 3, kind of stem from my childhood, and then the other 2 I'm not so familiar with. But yeah, I did get a few facts from Wikipedia or whatever.
Right.
So yeah.
So Chad will take us through the history of 1994 itself, and then we will go through all the movies alphabetically, because that's the easiest way to do it, breaking each movie down, talking about some performances we liked, some moments we liked, and then at the end, we're going to rank our own list and then come up with our compiled Best Picture winner between the 2 of us. Hopefully there's not too much debate, but if we ever get stuck in a tie, we have Siri ready to flip a coin. I'll give a little Oscars history here and there about the ceremony itself, some of the other awards that these movies were nominated for, and then we'll also tease next month's year, and that'll be it. It's a very straightforward show. We're talking Oscar movies, 1994. It's going to be a blast. So Chad, first, also one last thing I want to reiterate is that the movies we are selecting, when you see 1994, these are not the 1994 Oscars that took place in 1994. They took place in 1995, but all the movies are from 1994. So when addressing this ceremony, we will be talking about the 1995 ceremony, but these are the movies of 1994. So yeah, Chad has all of them displayed behind him. He's got his Pulp Fiction poster. He's even got his little Lion King in there, which was nominated and won other awards, not Best Picture. But yeah, we have a lot to talk about. So Chad, why don't you first give us a little bit of a background on what was happening in the world, in America in 1994? Set the stage for us.
Okay. Well, there was some stuff going on. 1994 was designated the International Year of the Family. I don't know what the hell that means, but it was. The North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, was established. The American figure skater Nancy Kerrigan was attacked by Tonya Harding. Mm-hmm.
A movie we will
Controversy.
not be talking about because I, Tonya was snubbed, so we will not
Yeah,
unfortunately be talking about
great
I,
movie.
Tonya. Great
Mhm.
movie.
Bill Clinton delivers his first State of the Union address calling for healthcare reform, a ban on assault weapons, and welfare reform. And we're still talking about these issues today.
Right.
And
As I
Clinton
said,
did.
it's a timeless
Hmm?
year. I mean, it feels like a year of history, but at the same time, it feels like 1994 was yesterday, and I wasn't even alive then. But it
Right.
feels too recent and too old all at once.
Yep. Clinton actually did sign the federal assault weapons ban. I don't know really what that banned, though. I didn't do that research. Or like if it, I didn't. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think they're still banned.
We did very surface level research when it came to
Right.
non-movie related things.
Pretty
we're not gonna
much.
dive deep. Some of these movies are have history attached to them too, so we'll dive into it a little bit there too.
The Winter Olympics took place in Lillehammer. I don't even know where that is. Apple releases the Power Macintosh. Nelson Mandela is inaugurated as South Africa's first black president.
Okay.
And some darker news. Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman were murdered, spawning one of the biggest murder trials ever. Jeff Bezos founds Amazon.com. Heard of it?
Wow. 1994. That seems like a more further back in time than I thought he did. But
yeah. Major League Baseball players go on strike, beginning the longest work stoppage in sports history. The World Series was also canceled, apparently. George W. Bush is elected governor of Texas. The original PlayStation video game system was released in Japan, not yet in America until 1995.
Very cool.
We have some famous births. We have Julia Garner, Dakota Fanning. I was like, wait. Justin Bieber. They're all the same age? What?
I know. Crazy, right?
Deaths. Kurt Cobain, one of my faves.
Mm-hmm.
Richard Nixon. John Wayne Gacy, a serial killer. And then Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman again.
Yeah.
And then something I'm also very passionate about, music. Some landmark albums. You have Grace by Jeff Buckley. The Blue Album by Weezer. Illmatic by Nas. Dummy by Portishead. Definitely Maybe by Oasis. The Downward Spiral by Nine Inch Nails. MTV Unplugged in New York by Nirvana. Crooked Rain by Pavement. And Super Unknown by Soundgarden, and Dookie by Green Day.
Wow. Yeah, a lot of good albums then. Yeah, good. 94 was a good year.
90s in general. It's great
for sure.
decade for music.
All right, so is that all for your history for the 94?
Yeah, I think that's cool. That's all I got.
Obviously we got a lot of history to talk about, obviously with the show, also with the movie history. I did look up Lillehammer is in Norway. So there's your
Thank you.
Little answer to that question.
You learned something.
Right, exactly. We learn new things every day and every second here on Picture This. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the actual ceremony itself in 1994. I have my notes on my phone. Forgive me. It's better than my Marvel podcast a few days.
That's what I just did.
Where I was actually videotaping from my phone. So obviously, this ceremony is notable. It is the 67th year. So 67th ceremony. It was taking place in 1995, but of course for the movies of 1994. And something had happened that hadn't happened in 56 years. And Chad, I don't know if you know this. Tom Hanks was the first actor in 56 years to win back-to-back Best Actor Oscars.
Wow.
So he had won in 1993 for Philadelphia. He won in 1994 for Forrest Gump. We will, of course, get into that later. But that was a huge deal because it was not precedent. It did not happen a lot. It happened a few times with actresses, but not in the Best Actor category. As you know, the acting categories are so competitive that to win it 2 years in a row is nearly impossible.
I mean, how are you not going to give Tom Hanks an award? I mean,
right. The thing is, we've seen like Christoph Waltz has been nominated for Inglourious Basterds and Django Unchained. He won both of those, but those were like a few years apart. And Mahershala Ali, Moonlight, and Green Book. The years were close, but still pretty far apart in comparison to this, which is literal back-to-back Oscars. So what happens is the person who wins the Best Actor Oscar presents the Best Actress Oscar at the next Oscars. So right before Tom Hanks won his Oscar in 94, he had to present the award to Jessica Lange for Best Actress at this award. So he was coming as the previous winner for Best Actor to present the Best Actress Award, and then he ended up winning Best Actor right after that. So he got to present an award for his award he had just won, and then he got to get an award after just presenting an award. It's a lot. So
are you saying that's the only time that has ever happened, or
no? It happened in 1937 and 1938. Spencer Tracy won Best Actor.
But since then, and then after,
We have not seen any
Wow.
other back-to-back, at least actor winners.
Impressive.
I don't know about actress. I don't believe we've seen back-to-back acting winners since. We've seen some directing and some cinematography, obviously back to back. There was that stretch where Emmanuel Lubezki won 3 cinematography awards in a row. But yeah, best actor. It is arguably, if not director or picture, it is the hardest category. That and best actress to win, especially once. And he won it twice. So that's the most notable thing. The Oscar ceremony was held on March 27th, 1995 at the Los Angeles Shrine Auditorium. As I said, Jessica Lange won Best Actress. Tom Hanks won Best Actor. Diane Weist picked up her second Oscar for Bullets Over Broadway for Supporting Actress. And Martin Landau won his first Oscar for Ed Wood in Supporting Actor. And this is actually a case where 3 of the winners, were previous winners already. So Jessica Lange, Tom Hanks, and Diane Weist had already won, and Martin Landau was the first one-time winner, and it was unfortunately the only Oscar Martin Landau won. And there was a tie for best live-action short film. Ties are possible in the Oscars if it happens to get the same amount of voters. So there was a tie, and it was presented by Jack Nicholson, who got to say, "There's a tie." So that was pretty cool. It was broadcast on ABC. David Letterman was the host. His monologue is very funny. I know Chad watched it earlier. I sent it to him.
David Letterman.
And there was also a lot of attention because the documentary Hoop Dreams was not even nominated for Best Documentary.
By the way, if Mr. Hiller is still in the auditorium, there's some guys out in the parking lot. I'd like to talk to him about Hoop Dreams. So,
we talked a little bit about before the show, Chad and I, that documentaries don't really get nominated for Best Picture, but Best Documentary it didn't even get nominated for. And we've seen countless snubs over the years. Won't You Be My Neighbor? Just most recently, Dick Johnson Is Dead and Boys State. There are a lot of really important documentaries that don't get nominated. So that just must be a common trend. But that is all I have to say about the actual ceremony itself. So I think it's time now to share. Yes.
Would you say that's all you have to say about that?
Yes, there's our first reference. Thank you, Chad, keeping us hot with the references. One of the things with my brain is sometimes there are things that I retain, but then when it comes time to shoot a show, I they all escape my brain. So thank you for keeping the references fresh.
Sure.
I think it's also important to talk about some of the other ceremonies. Obviously, we're talking about Best Picture, so we're not going to really span out into other categories. But the SAG Awards, this was the first year of the SAG Awards, and we see the SAG Awards is a big indicator of performance awards at the Oscars. This was the first year for the SAG Awards. Tom Hanks won that one. And this is actually an interesting fact, a little tidbit. We'll talk later about the other nominees that the movies got, but this was the only awards body of the main awards bodies that nominated Robin Wright for Best Supporting Actress for Forrest Gump. They nominated both her and Sally Field. And then they nominated John Turturro for Supporting Actor for Quiz Show, opposed to Paul Schofield, who was nominated at the Oscars for Best Supporting Actor. So, a lot of the similar nominees, but there were some swap outs for other cast members, some additions. As always, SAGs always like to do their own thing, but generally they stay in line with the Oscars. The BAFTAs actually took a very interesting approach. They awarded 4 Weddings and a Funeral Best Picture. That was their Best Picture, and it actually won a great deal. It won Best Director, Best Actor for Hugh Grant. Shawshank was not even nominated at the BAFTAs. But again, they only had 4 nominees at the BAFTAs, so it was the other 4 that we're talking about. Golden Globes, the Best Drama went to Forrest Gump, and the Best Musical or Comedy went to The Lion King. And again, Shawshank Redemption, not nominated, and we'll get into that a little bit later. And then Critics' Choice Awards, we will talk about it normally on the show, but they didn't exist in 1994, so we can't talk about them in this particular show. So Critics' Choice came to be in a few years later than this. So nothing on Critics' Choice. But that was just a little summary of some of the other precursor awards headed into Oscar night. So really the movies with the momentum, obviously Forrest Gump had some momentum after winning the Golden Globe, and Tom Hanks winning the SAG, but it was really 4 Weddings and a Funeral that had most of the momentum. I wouldn't say it was the favorite to win, but it did have a lot of momentum for winning that BAFTA award. But again, it is a very British movie, so it doesn't make sense why it was the winner over in Britain. So, Chad, before we dive into these 5 movies, we've done all the history now. Now we're going to get into the movies, but why don't we share our lists of the movies that didn't make it, the movies that didn't make this cut of 5.
Right.
So, Chad, why don't you start us off and tell us?
Okay.
I know you have a pretty long list. There were, again, 1994, one of the best movie years ever. Mm-hmm. So we have a lot to choose from. This doesn't necessarily need to be, at least not for me, like the movies that should have been nominated, but just other movies that are notable from 1994 that we want to at least give a shout out to. So, Chad, why don't you take us away? with that.
So I'm going to preface this by saying this is basically my kid brain picking a lot of these movies. I was a child in 1994, and a lot of these movies have stuck with me as I was a kid for years later. So here's my list.
Cool.
Yeah, so my honorable mentions are Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, very funny movie. Blank Check, that's a Disney movie. My Girl 2, I had a crush on that girl. Stephen King's The Stand, I haven't actually seen it, but I love that book so very much. The Flintstones, I mean, Angels in the Outfield, great movie. Well, I mean, True Lies, that is actually kind of a great movie. The Mask. Hoop Dreams I haven't seen, but I felt like everyone says it's a fantastic, so put that on there. Little Giants, I love Little Giants. Wes Craven's New Nightmare, great horror movie. Clerks, Interview with the Vampire, The Santa Claus. I actually really love The Santa Claus. Heavenly Creatures I just recently watched. It was all right, but it was a precursor to Lord of the Rings. Miracle on 34th Street is a reboot. I haven't seen it because I'm such in love with the old one. We'll get to that in a later show. Leon the Professional. Wasn't that first Natalie Portman's first role?
Yeah.
Junior, where Arnold Schwarzenegger got to be pregnant.
Okay, I've never seen that.
Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it. I've never seen it.
Okay, I've never seen it
I want
either.
to see it now. Yeah. Okay.
But I mean, that's 1994 for you.
Right. Yeah, you got to bring up all the notable ones, even if you haven't seen them.
Dumb and Dumber, of course. Richie Rich, when the movie that made me want a McDonald's in my home.
Wow.
Macaulay Culkin plays a rich kid, and you know how us, millennials, and even especially the early millennials older than me, fell in love with Home Alone.
Yeah.
And then I had two movies that I thought might actually have been some decent Best Picture nominees had it been expanded. I wouldn't want to replace anything, but The Lion King and Ed Wood.
Yeah, I got
and
Mufasa here.
Hearkening back to what Dill was saying earlier, I think Martin Landau was deserving. That was a really great performance, and I think Ed Wood is a great movie.
Definitely. All great choices. I'll rattle off my list. I had a lot of similarities. Obviously, the Jim Carrey doubleheader, Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, Dumb and Dumber. Speed, I think, is a great movie from 1994.
What?
Yeah,
I missed that.
Lion King, as we said, is actually probably, I think, better than all 5 of these movies that we're going to talk about today. Like, personally, I think I like it better than all 5 of these movies. It was my childhood favorite. It's still a favorite. Angels in the Outfield, True Lies, Barcelona, The Mask, The Little Rascals, Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, which picked up a lot of nominations for its costumes, especially. Ed Wood, as you said, Chad. Hoop Dreams, Kevin Smith's debut film, Clerks, 1994. Bullets Over Broadway, which is a Woody Allen film, Heavenly Creatures, The Santa Claus, Interview with the Vampire, Leon the Professional, and Star Trek Generations. Those are all the movies from 1994. Star Trek, sorry. Yes, Star Trek.
I'll look it up. I haven't heard of it.
Yeah, so
I can't.
It's when you want to buy something in space and you use your Star Trek,
I can't believe. I can't believe that I missed Speed. Speed is one of the greatest action films ever.
Yeah, I'd say if I had to expand the category to like 5 to 10, I would definitely add Lion King. I might add Ed Wood. Definitely.
That one's kind of teetering. I don't know. I mean, it was kind of silly.
I do think they got it right for the most part. I think I would have maybe subbed out one of these movies, which we'll get to in a little bit, with Lion King. That would have been my 5. If I had to pick 5, would be 4 of these movies plus Lion King. But we'll get into that when we rank them later. Without further ado, we've talked for 20 minutes about the history and the lead up and the setup and all the precursors. Now let's talk about the movies themselves. So, Chad, you're gonna give us the basic introductions. I'm gonna put on a special hat for this one. We were starting with the Best Picture winner of that year. It just happened to be alphabetically the first one on the list, and that is Forrest Gump. So, Chad, this is from Halloween, actually.
I saw the pictures, and it was quite fantastic. Maybe he can share it later.
Yeah. So I'll share it. Go ahead, Chad. Tell us about Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump was directed by Robert Zemeckis, written by Eric Roth, cinematography by Don Burgess, and music by Alan Silvestri. Heard of him? Brief synopsis here. Forrest Gump is a 1994 American comedy drama film. It is based on a 1986 novel of the same name by Winston Groom. Stars Tom Hanks, Robin Wright, Gary Sinise, McKelty Williamson, and Sally Field. The story depicts several decades in the life of Forrest Gump, a slow-witted but kind-hearted man from Alabama who witnesses and unwittingly influences several defining historical events in the 20th century United States. The film differs substantially from the novel.
Yeah. Have you read the novel, Chad? Have you read the novel?
No, no.
I'm not either. So I can't say.
I read a little, but
yeah, I can't say how much of a successful adaptation it is. But I forgot it was a book as well. Yeah.
There's varying interpretations have been made of the protagonist and the film's political symbolism. In 2011, the Library of Congress selected the film for preservation in the United States National Film Registry as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. I think that's pretty much all I have for like synopsis stuff and who's in it and directed it and everything. Very, very great, well made movie, I think.
So let's discuss it. What are your overall thoughts on Forrest Gump? Like, what do you think?
So with Forrest Gump, this is definitely one that hits me in the nostalgia heart, and I know it does you as well, maybe even more so. I don't think I've seen it as many times as you have, but like I saw it at like such a young age, not too terribly long after it came out, that I just remember it being like super culturally relevant, and my parents were watching it with me, and there's certain parts where I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have been watching it at this age, but it's definitely one of these films, like it's so well made. Watching this at this time, I've noticed like quite a bit of things, some great, still really great, and then some I'm like, okay. But I will say that I noticed the first time that, when he opens his little briefcase on the bench, with his box of chocolates, you can kind of see some foreshadowing events that are going to take place later. You see the ping pong paddle, you see the hat that you're wearing right now, and yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like moments like that are kind of genius. And then there's moments later, just like shots like when he's sitting there just talking about like the beauty of him running through the desert and the sunset, and you see that shot, and you see that shot of him on the shrimping boat, and just some of those are just some of the most gorgeous shots I've ever seen in a film. So it's definitely got the cinematography down. All the performances are great. I mean, what else can you say about them? It's just one of these movies that really gets you in the feels quite a bit. And yeah, I mean, what do you have to say about it? Maybe that'll spark some other thoughts.
I saw this film at a younger age, like maybe like 10, 11. The thing with Forrest Gump is that it kind of got me thinking about movies in more than just a surface level entertainment kind of level. I think the two movies that really made me want to like talk about movies to a deeper extent were Forrest Gump and The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight was almost like that edgier movie that like made me see movies almost more maturely. And then Forrest Gump was kind of the movie that I really, really realized what you could do with the medium of cinema itself. Seeing Gary Sinise with no legs, and then seeing, how they were able to execute those war scenes, and then the running scenes, like you said, with the cinematography. What I love about Forrest Gump is that it is so many different chapters of someone's life, but because you have this through line of this romance between, or not even romance, but this friendship of Forrest and Jenny, it really keeps everything consistent to where each chapter feels distinctly different than the next, in the fact that like one is all about his ping pong time, and one is the war story, and then you have the story with him running. They're all separate, but they do feel connected because of that emotional character relationship. And I think it's a really interesting way of telling a historical story without just telling a historical story. It's seen from a different point of view than we're used to seeing with leading characters in movies. This is someone who is not like everyone else. And I think that puts a really interesting point of view on the historical events happening around him. I've seen the criticisms about how like it glosses over some things in history, but you also have to keep in mind that this character doesn't process history the same way I do, the same way you do, the same way a child does, the same way an adult does who has had all this life experience. He's learning things from the first time. He takes things very face value, and there's something beautiful about that way of life, that there are some moments that'll be glossed over, and some moments that are obviously made more for that comedic bit than like having actual gravity and weight and like actually bringing more seriousness to some of these subjects. But I don't think that's what the film was going for. I think the film was kind of more about Forrest and his view of life rather than the events themselves that he was passing through. Also, you got to take into account it's made in the 90s. So obviously there are things now with a lot of these movies that we'll talk about that
Mhm.
if made today, things would change. But I think you have to take
Mhm.
it when it was made. And looking back on it now, I mean, I can see why it was a phenomenon because it has a little bit of everything for everyone. You have a charming kid story. You have a charming sports story. Even he plays 3 sports. He's a runner. He's a ping pong player. He's a football player. And you have, of course, that romance with Jenny. And you have the war story. I mean, if you're a war film fan, even if
Mhm.
you're not a fan of the other parts of the movie, there's a whole chunk in there that is about the Vietnam War that is like a really well made war film. It just has a little bit of everything. It's like a kid in a candy store when I watch this movie. It's like there's another part where I'm more drawn to than the next every time I watch it. It's always different. And I think it's so quotable. I mean, you pulled a quote out earlier. I mean, I think it is endlessly quotable, and I think
Very,
a lot
yeah.
of that is due to Tom Hanks and his performance. Chad, what do you think of the performances in this movie and how the
Well,
actors deliver the lines and all that stuff?
Well, I mean, first of all, I just want to say, Dill, that was beautiful, man. I mean, just hearing you talk about a movie that you just love so much, I'm just like, wow, you rattled all that out of your head. Like, I didn't even see you read off anything.
It's all here.
That was great, man. You live, breathe, eat, sleep, Forrest Gump.
I'm like Andy Dufresne with the music. It's all here. It's all here. So there's a reference for you. I got
There
the
you go.
references.
Exactly. So, with the performances, I mean, yeah, like Tom Hanks he's like what, America's dad. He's like one of the best actors ever. I mean, sometimes you can say that maybe an actor has outperformed Tom Hanks, maybe in like Captain Phillips or something. But I mean, for the most part, he steals like every movie. I've heard other people say it. I don't know. I don't necessarily.
Oh, you
agree.
mean in the context of Captain Phillips itself?
Yeah.
Or like other performances. Yeah. Okay.
Just in a
Yeah.
movie.
I mean,
It's not
I
a big
think
deal.
I think he's still great in Captain Phillips. But yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's great in pretty much everything he's been in. I don't think I've ever seen a bad Tom Hanks performance. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, like shit, like everyone's acting their hearts out in this movie. Tom Hanks. Yeah, a lot of people talk about how it's like a maybe he's not portraying someone with a mental disability, right? But yeah, I think he does a great job in that. Like he doesn't. It doesn't feel like something like, from music or something like that, where it's like, it feels like they're just trying to, I don't know. I can't really explain it, but it feels like he's true to it. And like,
there is an honestness.
is
It's
that
not putting on
character.
a stereotype. He's not putting on this crazy
Exactly.
stereotype. Obviously, there are moments that are funny. So when he plays it a little bit bigger, it can be almost misconstrued as like
Yeah,
exploiting
like-
the stereotype. But I do think he does keep it honest and humble. And I think in the moments where he is, experiencing things for the first time, especially with Jenny, I think the scenes with Jenny really ground him and make him not this bumbling idiot. Because it could have been, if you cast the wrong actor in this, if
Mhm.
you don't have those scenes with Jenny and with his mother, it could be just this guy bumbling through history, because you do have those moments where he shows his butt to the president, and when he, says his last words to Bubba are "Ha, Bubba," like there's moments where yes, you could be seen as this bumbling idiot bumbling through history, but because you have those other moments, it grounds him and it does give him a personality that you can relate to. It gives him empathy. I think it's one of the master classes of acting. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but it is one of my favorite performances of all time in any movie, any actor. Yeah.
I definitely agree there. And just to kind of piggyback off what you were saying there a little bit, where you said it could have been like kind of like a bumbling idiot. And don't get me wrong, these other actors I'm about to mention are definitely great in their own right. But like it could have been up for the role that they had Bill Murray, Chevy Chase were kind of up for the role. And I'm like, I don't think they would have given it that level that Tom Hanks gave it. You also had John Travolta, Sean Penn. Said he passed it up. And then the author of the book said when he wrote it, he had imagined someone like John Goodman playing it.
Oh, okay.
So
I mean, again, I think these actors would be fine, but there's something about Tom Hanks, his naiveness, but also, that earnestness and that, heart. I love it.
Innocence, heart, just everything about it. Cause like, when he's experiencing the world, it's just like, like it's like he doesn't understand things on a different level, but he also that kind of aids him in his journey because like he doesn't let like all these fears and anxieties and worries and thoughts bog him down, like, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna go, join the military. I'm not gonna go do this because it sounds scary. There's a lot of times in my life that if I was more like Forrest Gump, maybe I would have like done something different. I don't know,
Right.
but yeah, and that I also wanted to bring back kind of the symbolism of the feather is kind of a thing that like is brought up, and it's kind of like vague a little bit, where you can kind of like put whatever you think it might resemble, whatever you might think. And I think Tom Hanks, I had a quote, the feather in the movie can symbolize many things, but Tom Hanks said to him it felt like the symbolism of chance itself landing at his feet, and how you choose to deal with the chances you are given. And I feel like that's Forrest Gump right there.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
I
then
think you couldn't have said it better yourself. Yeah. I
yeah,
couldn't have said it
and
better
then
myself.
right. So yeah, and then you have Robin Wright, and it's not introducing Robin Wright. She was in The Princess Bride before that, but this role was pretty damn good. It's so crazy to just see his trajectory in his life mirrored with hers, and she's kind of like on this downward whatever, because as a kid, Jenny was, I guess, molested by her, definitely abused. It's hinted at, I think.
It's hinted at, yeah. I
And
would
so
say, yeah.
you have this character that was abused, taken away. She lives with her like aunt or her grandma or something, and then like she's scared of the dog, and so she's all she has is Forrest. And then it feels like she kind of pushes him away a lot because she can't be with him, right? They're different, and so that's I don't know, like what she's just on a different path, and so she ends up going her own way, kind of doing heavy drugs and stuff like that. I'm not condoning that, and I'm not against that. I'm just saying, like, this is a life, but she does end up almost committing suicide once, and so yeah, this movie's pretty dark at times.
Yeah, and like I said, that's what keeps it endlessly rewatchable for me, is because you have those moments when I was a kid where I kind of glossed over some of that, and like I was more like, oh,
Right.
this is so cool, like this guy's running across America. But now when I watch it, I can like look at some of the more intimate, softer moments about death and about loss and about family and relationships, that like that's what I come back to now as an adult watching this movie. So yeah, a really good movie. I mean, we've talked about so many
Yeah.
different moments and scenes. Do you have one particular scene that like is your favorite or that stands out to you?
There's quite a few. There's definitely the two Forrest moments that are, well, Forrest and Jenny moments that are like, they're both towards the end where, well, actually three moments that I can remember now. So the first scene is basically when Forrest is standing at the bottom of the steps and Jenny is on the steps, and he asks her to marry him, and she's not sure, and then he's basically just telling her that he would make a great husband. He's been there for her, throughout thick and thin. Basically, he's always been there, and he has that line where he says, "I'm not a smart man, but I know what love is."
I'm not a smart man, but I know what love is.
And it's just, that could be like really silly and stuff like that, but he just the way he delivers that line, I'm like, if you didn't think that this is a great movie before that moment, then you're like, okay, never mind. This movie's great. I just love that line. And then you have just the scene when she brings little Forrest, because they have a kid together. She brings Forrest to meet little Forrest, played by Haley Joel Osment.
Makes sense.
Hello, Mr. Gump.
Hello?
He's basically sitting there like, without really even saying it, he's just like, is he smart? And just the way he gives that, and just the way, like, she reacts to it, and you just kind of see him over there sitting down, and you're just like thinking, like, so many people that have to like go through things like that when they, not even just like mental intelligence issues or whatever that is, thinking about passing something on to your kid. And it's just like, when he delivers that line, that floors me. I'm just like, oh God. And then the other scene that I really, really like is, because Gary Sinise plays Lieutenant Dan. And, Lieutenant Dan is this guy, like, he's, generations and generations before him, he's just always been in the military. Like, his entire family's been in the military. They're like, we all die on the battle lines. And so that's what he wanted his life to be. He wanted to die a hero. And, basically he doesn't do that, because Forrest saves him. He saves everybody, because that's what Forrest does. He's not going to just let someone die there. And then he goes on to basically resent Forrest for this, and they form like this like kind of unlikely friendship later, and they end up becoming partners on the shipping shrimp boat, and basically just the one thing is just when everything starts to work out in Lieutenant Dan's life again, he's swimming away. I forget the line, but he's basically saying that he's made his peace with God because he was hating God and stuff like that. I just thought that was a genius moment too.
Definitely. All right, so let's move on to the next movie because we've talked a lot about Forrest.
Sure.
It's one of my favorites. That's it.
I do have I do have a few nitpicks, but we can always bring those up later. Maybe when I rank them.
when we go over our rankings. All right, so the next movie we have is Four Weddings and a Funeral, which was a first watch from me. You've seen it before. Chad,
Twice.
why don't you tell us about... Okay, cool. Why don't you tell us about Four Weddings and a Funeral? I'll take this off, by the way.
Yes. Whatever you want to do, man.
Yeah, I'm not going to keep it the whole time.
So, Four Weddings and a Funeral is directed by Mike Newell, written by Richard Curtis, cinematography by Michael Coulter, music by Richard Rodney Bennett. Four Weddings and a Funeral is a 1994 British romantic comedy film. It was the first of several films by screenwriter Richard Curtis to feature Hugh Grant and follows the adventures of Charles, played by Grant, and his circle of friends through a number of social occasions as they each encounter romance. Andy McDowell stars as Charles' love interest Carrie, with Kristen Scott Thomas, James Fleet, Simon Callow, John Hannah, Charlotte Coleman, David Bower, Corin Redgrave, and Rowan Atkinson in supporting roles, and he has one of my favorite scenes actually. This movie actually catapulted Hugh Grant into international superstardom, especially in America. I think that's all I have for that. Oh, actually, I have one more thing to mention. Screenwriter Richard Curtis's own experiences as a wedding attendee inspired the premise for Four Weddings and a Funeral. According to Curtis, he began writing the script at age 34 after realizing he had attended 65 weddings in an 11-year period. At one wedding, he was propositioned by a fellow guest, but he turned her down and forever regretted it. Accordingly, he based the origin of Charles and Carrie's romance on that situation.
Wow, interesting. So now knowing that there's a little bit more basis and truth in the story, I can appreciate a little bit more. This was the one when I watched it where it ended, I said that was nice, but then I kind of, when stacked up against so many other great films, it's the one for me that gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. I love a good rom-com, but I do think at the same time, I think the comedic bits here are stronger than the romantic bits, and I'll get into it a little bit later with some nitpicks. I think I'm much more invested in the comedy of this piece than I am the romance, for some very specific reasons. But Chad, let me ask you, what is your overall thoughts on Four Weddings and a Funeral?
Yeah, so I saw Four Weddings and a Funeral a while ago just because I heard about it and people were talking about it, and I was like, what is this? So it's supposed to be like a really great romantic comedy. So I saw it. I think I might have felt the same way Dill did then, but I can't remember, to be honest. But after a second watch for this, I was like, I think this may be the best romantic comedy I've ever seen, and that maybe exists. I don't know. I just feel like, I don't know. I mean, you have other ones like When Harry Met Sally, and and the other ones from like back in the day too, I'm sure, that are pretty great. So maybe I'm overstepping here a little bit, but I'm just kind of enthusiastic about it because I watched it with my wife. We had a really great time. It was hilarious, but it also just has a lot of depth, I felt, where it's like, just the themes of trying to find love, and like, you don't even know if like marriage is for you, and maybe you might try it out a lot, and then they talk about serial monogamy is brought up, where I have a definition, but this is kind of what Hugh Grant's character goes through quite a bit, and he kind of, I think, has given up a lot. Because you have Matthew and Gareth, and they're the gay married couple, and there's a scene after Gareth dies. That's the funeral part of Four Weddings and a Funeral, and
I didn't even realize they were married. I thought they were just best friends.
I thought they were married. I'm pretty sure I read that they were.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, I mean, and you can just see like, just the love between those two, where, Matthew's just kind of like looking at him dancing all crazy. And that's one of the big comedy bits where he's just dancing like a buffoon. And he's going to end up killing somebody. And that's exactly what Matthew says, something like that. And, you don't maybe you don't realize just like the love that's there until the eulogy given by Matthew. You actually read some sort of like play, or not play, or poem or something. But the eulogies were just one of the, you just talk about like great moments in films. And I just feel like, the eulogy, a lot of these speeches, some of these lines, I can't really pick out, I haven't seen this as much as like Forrest Gump and Shawshank and Pulp Fiction, all those, but there are definitely really great moments in this. There's also one of the characters I really loved in this is Tom. He's the rich man who's, you're like, well, he's like so rich and stuff, and you think like maybe he would have like a wife or something like that, but he can't seem to, 'cause he stumbles over his words. He stumbles literally everywhere because he's very clumsy, and he's very unsure of himself. But this is like a big friend group in this movie, and most of them pretty much haven't found anybody except for Matthew and Gareth, and that they're kind of the Corey and Topanga, or the Ross and Rachel of that friend group, it feels like, or maybe not Ross, or maybe more Monica and Chandler, but like, or the Lily and Marshall of the friend group. So and everyone else is kind of trying to find something, and then like just Charles, just despite everything, he just can't let go of this one girl, and it doesn't feel like, because he actually lets her go. She gets married and stuff. It doesn't feel like he's stalking her or anything like that. They have a hilarious scene where she talks about all the sexual encounters she's had, and he's like, I don't even compare to that. And so it's just like a lot of these little scenes. But I don't know. Sometimes I also think like you don't need like the movie to be super deep and dramatic. Sometimes just a great comedy can I think be best picture material if it's done well.
I don't think it has to be this heavy drama, but at the same time, I felt like a lot of storylines for specific characters, there were reveals later on that happened that I feel like they weren't given enough attention throughout and in the beginning of the story to where those payoffs really happen. The one example I can think of is Kristen Scott Thomas's character. I think her name's Fifi. I feel like Fiona herself as a character, there's this great reveal later on that she, has always been in love with Charles, but I feel like we didn't get enough of that throughout, where it just kind of came out of nowhere. And when the speech is happening and she's starting to talk to him, where the conversation is going. But I wish they had planted those seeds a little bit earlier. Even the same with, what's his name who passes away, whose funeral it is?
Gareth.
Yeah, Gareth. I almost wanted a little bit more with him too, because you get the fact that he's like kind of the core of this friend group, but at the same time, when he dies, I didn't know his character well enough to then make that payoff worth it to me. And the moments that follow are great. The Kristen Scott Thomas moment where she's talking to Hugh Grant, that whole scene is great. Obviously the eulogy is great, but I feel like when the moments happen, there wasn't enough build up for those moments. It was really centered around Hugh Grant and Andie MacDowell's relationship, which I felt honestly was the most uninteresting part of the movie for me, just because it did seem like your normal rom-com thing. He meets her at the wedding, he falls in love, she has another guy, he gets jealous, she gets married, she leaves that guy, she ends up with him. It's very much your common romance rom-com thing, and I think the surrounding characters have the most interesting storylines, but they don't plant the seeds early enough on so that at the end they all don't seem to really feel payoff for me. I just felt watching it, that was kind of where it was going. I do think, like I said, the comedic bits are so strong that I was engaged the whole time. I was invested. But at the end, again, the person he ends up marrying, when you see who he's marrying at the end, when it's revealed who it is, you barely know her as a character. You really don't know much about her at all. They have a history, but you really don't know anything about her. And there was no real inkling that they had any sort of connection and bond up till then. So when it came out that was the person he was marrying, I was like, there's no way he's going to end up with her. He's going to end up leaving her for Andie MacDowell's character. And that might just be because I've seen those tropes played out in other movies since, and maybe this was the one that set the trends that would later follow. But I felt like, having him be the main character, when you find out that that's who he's going to marry and you really haven't gotten much about their relationship, you kind of know that it's not going to work out almost. And I felt bad for her. I always feel bad whenever I see a character get left at the altar in anything. So it hurt because A, we didn't know enough about her as a character. B, we didn't know enough about them as a relationship. And C, like, we're supposed to root for Hugh Grant, but like, it was tough to at the end, because I get it. Like his heart was with Andie MacDowell, but at the same time, like, doing that to anyone always hurts. Seeing at the end of Spider-Man 2, that's the one part where I'm like, oh, that poor guy. I don't love that guy, but MJ running away from her wedding, I'm like, oh, just like leaves that weird taste in my mouth. So those are the reasons, the nitpicks, why I was not the biggest fan of this movie. And I think also another part, like I said, is because it's in the context of all these masterpieces that are surrounding it, that I feel like it just feels less of a best picture to me. So those are my thoughts. This
I
is the only
think
one that didn't rope me in like that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I definitely can see where you're coming from with some of those. Like, I do kind of feel like maybe the Fiona thing could have went somewhere else, or they could have like built on that earlier. I do see that for sure. I think the Henrietta part, where she's the woman that he almost marries. I mean, they do set some of the groundwork up there. There's like 2 scenes before that. Where they kind of talk about their history and stuff like that. So like, and you also like, you get the kind of like need that Charles feels to, have a wife, I guess. Maybe he feels like it's kind of like later in his life, he's like, I probably should be doing this now. So, he kind of, wants to rush into it maybe a little too much and stuff. And I mean, I feel like a lot of people end up like that. I mean, that's why, divorce is a pretty high occurrence and stuff. People sometimes rush into it. They don't know who they love. And I feel like that's kind of like what it does really well, though, later, where it kind of saves it a little bit, where as you felt that Charles was kind of a little unlikable in certain ways, because it is a shitty thing to do, to leave somebody at the altar. And like when it's building up and like, he finds out that the future maybe love of his life is now single again. And he's like, that door was closed and now it's open and it's my wedding day and stuff. And they have like a whole scene of like him, like talking to the priest and like sitting there going, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no. And he goes, what is he goes, bloody, or does he say bloody a lot? I think he does.
It's something British.
Blimey or something. It's something very British, and he says it bugga. That's it. He says it a lot, and so he's very conflicted. Obviously, he doesn't go like, "Oh, she's available." Yes,
Right.
So he's
You
sitting
see
there
the
like,
moral dilemma. Yeah.
"Oh." And then you have Matthew and his brother David, who is actually deaf, come in, and they're both like talking to him as like groomsmen should, and they're like, I think they're groomsmen, but they come in and they're like, I don't know how British people do their weddings, but they're like, you have 2 options. You can go through with it, or you can not go through with it. And then he's like, what's the third? He's like, I haven't thought of a third. And that's a great joke right there. But then he does think of the third during the ceremony. And it's this whole sign language thing. And I just found that so genius. And then just like when, they're sitting there talking, and that's kind of some representation there for, sign language and stuff. And it's a really great moment between him and his brother. You can tell they have a really great relationship. He knows sign language and stuff like that. And he just basically tells them, this is the rest of your life, dude. You have to follow your heart. You can't just go with the next person that happens to be available. And, so I just feel like it is more of like a struggle for him. But then you do, because you're worried about this. I know you're probably like me, where you're just sitting there like, oh no, is he actually going to do it? And then like, well, how is the scene going to play out? And then like it happens. It's very dramatic. Well, not dramatic. It's very comedic, because she ends up punching him, and he's just laying on the floor like this just happened, basically. Yeah. And so even then, when he's already made it, he's not like smiling or anything. He's like, And then the other thing, I'll come back to it.
I was just gonna say, like, I think the reason I don't love the ending is not because of what he does, because that's where it's going, and it's not who he ends up with. It's more of the idea that Henrietta, right? That's her name.
Yeah. Yeah.
She just almost feels more like a plot device than the character herself. And I wish I just got to know her more as a person, so that even then, when this happened, I could care about her more. Or if she's meant to be this bad person, maybe I will root for that relationship. But the thing is, I wasn't swayed either way to either really love or really hate Henrietta. So when he did leave her, I was just, it didn't make me feel what I felt like it could have made me feel if they had just given her maybe one more scene earlier on the movie, because we don't meet her till I think Wedding 2, earlier on in the movie, to really like give us some sort of idea that this is someone we should remember for the rest of the course of the runtime. I almost thought it was going to be Fiona when they revealed who his wife was going to be. I was like, maybe this is where it's going. But even then, I was like, they didn't plant that early enough. So it just, I feel like it's more of, I'm fine with the direction it went. It just I would have liked it to be more justified when it got to that destination. It's like it's not the destination, it's the journey. And I feel like the destination was fine. It was just the journey to get there for me wasn't completely fulfilled. But like you said, it's a great comedy. There are so many great moments. I think we gotta move on to the next one soon. But the moment that we both have talked about a lot is that Rowan Atkinson moment.
Repeat after me.
And that is the best part of the whole movie to me.
So hilarious.
The way he's stumbling over his words, and it's just so funny
because
it happens so often, but it never gets old. It happens literally every other word. It's the same joke over and over again, but it's just so funny.
Why I, Lydia?
Why I, Bernard?
Sorry, not be joined in matrimony.
May not be joined in matrimony.
To be my awful wedded wife.
To be my lawful wedded wife.
That's right. That's right.
I kind of actually wish he would have returned again later. That's a character
almost improved, like comes back at the end and he's perfectly fluent now and he's got it all together. But I think honestly, like Love Actually and this movie, he has that one moment where he just comes in, steals the show, and leaves. And I think that's honestly Rowan Atkinson's thing, is like coming into a movie, doing the one scene, stealing the show, and heading out. So we'll get into the nominations for Weddings and a Funeral had at the end, because I forgot to do it for Forrest Gump. So we'll just save it all for the end.
Sure.
So let's move on to the next movie, which is Pulp Fiction. Now, this is obviously a classic, a modern classic. Tarantino. It is, the movie that put him on the map. So, Chad, why don't you give us a little bit of background on Pulp Fiction?
Yeah, Pulp Fiction, man. Directed by Quentin Tarantino, written by Quentin Tarantino. The music was pretty much done by Quentin Tarantino, because this movie doesn't have a score. This movie just has a soundtrack, and it's awesome.
That reminds me of Taika Waititi just won the Grammy for the album he put together for Jojo Rabbit, and he's like, "Wait, why am I winning this? I didn't write any of this music." And they're like, "Well, you technically put the music together and put it in the movie. You curated the playlist." So he's like, "All right, I'll take it." It's the same thing. Quentin Tarantino didn't write any of this music, but he perfectly picked which songs to put in this movie, and they worked out perfectly. So.
Oh yeah, I mean it's pretty awesome, especially like during like the first little sequence, the credits, when he has the what is the first song? It's the surfing song or whatever, and ha ha ha, and then it goes right into Jungle Boogie, and you're like, okay.
And you hear the record scratch, you hear the change of song. It's as if someone is literally playing the song along with the movie rather than it just being a part of the story. It feels like someone is literally watching this and going, "This is what's going to set the mood here. This is what's going to set the mood there." Really
awesome.
smart.
And then, the cinematography done by, I don't even know how to pronounce his name, Andrzej Sakula.
Andre, maybe?
Sorry.
Anyways,
Pulp Fiction is a 1994 American neo-noir black comedy crime film written and directed by Quentin Tarantino, who conceived it with Roger Avery. It stars John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, Bruce Willis, Tim Roth, Ving Rhames, and Uma Thurman. It tells several stories of criminal Los Angeles. The title refers to the pulp magazines and hard-boiled crime novels popular during the mid-20th century, known for their graphic violence and punchy dialogue. And Pulp Fiction is widely regarded as Tarantino's masterpiece, with particular praise for its screenwriting. The self-reflexivity, unconventional structure, and extensive homage and pastiche have led critics to describe it as a touchstone of postmodern film. It is often considered a cultural watershed, influencing films and other media that adapted elements of its style. In 2008, Entertainment Weekly named it the best film since 1983 and has appeared on many critics' lists of the greatest films ever made. 2013, Pulp Fiction was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry, again, for the same reasons as Forrest Gump. And then I have, according to Philip Parker, the structural form is an episodic narrative with circular events adding a beginning and an end and allowing references to elements of each separate episode to be made throughout the narrative. Other analysts describe it as a structure as a circular narrative. And then I just had like a fun little thing. Much of Pulp Fiction's action revolves around characters going to the bathroom or using the toilet.
John Travolta's on the toilet multiple times in this movie. He's
pretty
shot
much.
On the toilet. He dies on the toilet. He goes to the bathroom, and that's when I think Uma Thurman Uma Thurman goes to the bathroom, and that's when she overdoses. And then he's also going to the toilet.
He goes to the bathroom when she overdoses.
So he goes to the bathroom when she overdoses, and then he goes to the bathroom when the whole diner robbery is happening. So he's always peeing.
Because he's in the bathroom, he's like, I just go out, thinker, go home, masturbate, you're good.
He-
Basically, he doesn't want any troubles with Marcellus. So
Yeah, I really love like you talked about mostly was the structure. I really love the structure of this film. I
Mhm.
love how it is this one story, but if you just tell it linearly, it's a good
Right.
story. But I think the fact that you
Mhm.
take different pieces and rearrange the narrative, it really keeps you. It's almost like a mystery where you're kind of like guessing, oh,
Mhm.
where does this come into the story? Is this
Mhm.
Marcellus guy? What's his deal? And then you see what happens to him, and then it goes back, and it's like, oh, so these are the two guys from that storyline. It's really interesting how he decides to weave it all together, and I think some credit needs to go to the editing as well for that. It
Yes,
picked up an
absolutely.
editing nomination, like it deserves that, and the writing itself, it's just so interesting. And I think the thing Quentin Tarantino does so well is that he makes dialogue about stuff that has nothing to do with the story, but
Mhm.
it's written so well, and the characters deliver it so well. Like the Royale with cheese stuff. It has nothing
It
to do with the plot, but it
but it
just gives the
makes
characters
Mhm.
personality, and it gives them a
Yes.
voice that you can relate to.
Hamburgers, the cornerstone of any nutritious breakfast.
Yeah,
And it
and
makes it kind of makes the worlds more real. Like you feel that there's like a past, like you know where Vincent just came from. He spent 3 years in what is it? Where'd he come from? Do you remember? Where you smoke weed a lot? I don't remember where he went. It was
All right,
Amsterdam.
we'll
Sorry,
edit that
Amsterdam.
out. Okay, gotcha. Okay. Oh, what place? Okay, I thought you meant like a place, like a car or a house, or
No,
I didn't know you
sorry.
meant like
He
a
spent 3
city.
years in Amsterdam, and yeah. So that's kind of a lot of the stuff he talks about.
hmm Yeah,
Mhm.
and of course these actors are delivering these lines so well. And we gotta talk, John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, Uma Thurman,
This is a tasty burger.
but
Oh,
also all the little
man.
bit parts. You have Christopher Walken in a small little scene.
Dude.
You have Bruce Willis, who's only in like the last half of the movie. Even Marcellus himself, Ving Rhames. It's so stacked with such good actors that every actor just really brings their own uniqueness to these roles.
Mhm.
Even Quentin Tarantino himself, I think he is probably the weak point of the performances in
Yeah.
this movie.
Isn't he usually?
But there's something about him playing an unlikable character and being kind of
Mhm.
unlikable that works. Yeah, it was a really really smart casting decision for all these characters, and I couldn't pick a favorite performance because every time I leave that I'm like Uma Thurman is just magnetic, but then I'm like, but Samuel L. Jackson with all those monologues, and then even again Ving Rhames is just so good and sells it. Like
Mhm.
there's so many performances I love in this movie. Yeah, it's a classic for a reason. It is a
And
modern
just
classic for a reason.
Just the way things are shot, just scenes are set up, and like how you have that one dialogue between well, it's not really a dialogue, it's this one monologue with Marcellus talking to Butch, and he's just it's just the shot is just on Butch the entire time, and he's just like kind of listening to Marcellus talk, and then just the iconography of like the band-aid on the back of his neck, and and then it's just kind of some of these things like in this movie particularly, I'm kind of like, it's kind of like odd for like a best picture, but it's kind of cool too. It's like, it's kind of edgy. So it's like, it's kind of cool that the Academy nominated that one, because like, there's like a gimp and a rape in this movie. It's insane.
Yeah.
Like
It's
what?
packed with a lot of like really out there subject matter that's
Yeah.
meant to really be provoking to the
Mhm.
audience. And I think it's interesting that, yeah, like you said, the Academy went for it, because when we think of Oscar bait, this is not Oscar bait at all.
Yeah.
It's very, it's just people having conversations. It's non-linear. It's, there's no like, wide, beautiful shot. Everything's very intimate. Like it's all so like opposite of what you see with like a Forrest Gump or a Shawshank, where it's like kind of this Oscar baity, huge crowd pleaser. This is not that this is a crowd pleaser, but in a different way. It's for a different audience. It's for a different mindset, a different theatrical experience. And I think since then we've gotten a lot of great movies that are similar to this. So it doesn't stand out as much now, but back then in 1994, I think this definitely stands out, and that's why it
Yeah.
didn't win as much as it
Absolutely.
could have. I think it would have won more had it, been embraced more. Had it been more of a common thing to see
Yeah.
at the Oscars. But back then, that's not what you saw. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, again, we're looking at these movies in the eras they're made.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite scene, Chad? Do you have a favorite moment, scene, anything?
Favorite moment. God, there's so many. I don't love the Butch and his girlfriend part, but I
Okay.
do love the whole storyline about like just the journey of the watch. I don't know if that's one of those MacGuffins or whatever,
Yeah.
but like it does kind of drive the whole thing. Like that's kind of his driver, and his almost could have been his downfall is this watch, like, it's so special to him. And he's like, I gotta go get that watch. You left the watch.
Mhm.
I
like that scene because it kind of takes you out of the world of like gangsters and hitmen. It's not like it's showing that this world is more than just your guys with suits with guns. It's not just Samuel Jackson.
Yeah.
It's not just John Travolta and Samuel Jackson's characters. It's a bigger world. Like there's more people involved. This is a professional boxer, and like he's intertwined with all this business, and it brings a more wide lens to this very intimate, what seems to be intimate circle of people, and it really broadens it and shows just how big of a character and big of a presence Marcellus is in this world, and his threat. It makes you take it a lot more seriously, I think.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's just like some of the. So I'll probably get into one of another scene later, but I love moments like of course the basement of the gun shop is kind of a weird scene, but you get like one of the best lines that I love is like, I'm pretty fucking far from okay, and then he explains what's gonna happen next. I'll tell you what happens next, and then he just tells Butch like, we're done. You get the hell out of here. You never come back, or else, you'll get it. And and then he says what's going to happen to the guy, the cop or whatever. And I definitely don't want to mess with Marcellus. Mm-hmm. Don't ever touch his wife's feet.
Because that's the end of the story. That is the end of the movie. It's just not the end of. It's the end of the story, not the end of the movie. It's the end of the. If you lay out all the scenes in chronological order, that scene with Marcellus and Butch is the end. But then after that, you go back to the scene with, Jules and Vince and the whole Quentin Tarantino scene and all that stuff. So again, it's like a really interesting way, because if you end the movie on that, like, it almost feels like not like a downer ending, but it's almost like an ending that you're like, whoa, like that's it. But ending it with that Jules scene in the diner with that big monologue, and then them just strolling out like badasses, it almost kind of then picks you back up again for that last credit roll and that last needle drop of the last song. So I really like how they choose what ending to make the ending.
Yeah. I mean, all these characters are kind of unlikable, but also kind of likable. Like they're just, I don't know. They're just like Vincent's really dumb, but you don't want to see him die. And of course you see him die because he's dumb. He leaves his gun on the counter while he goes to the bathroom.
Earlier moments, like the moment where he takes, what's her name? Uma Thurman's character.
Mia Wallace.
Yeah, Mia. Again, Chad is going to be much better character names. I'm more actor name heavy. I'll be saying actor names. Chad will be saying character names. But yeah, when he takes Mia out, like that scene is kind of where you get that moment where you're like, oh, like he means well. I mean, everyone in this world, some movies just show, the business side of things, the shoot 'em ups, the intense dialogue exchanges. What Quentin Tarantino does so well is he gives you those personal moments away from all the crime, away from the central core story, and you get to see what it's like for him to take someone out for a night of dancing and food. You get to see, Samuel Jackson and John Travolta talk about burgers and talk about all kinds
$5
of
milkshake.
Exactly. Like that's the stuff that really, really separates Quentin Tarantino's writing and his characters from all the other ones. In these movies and other movies is that, you get that, personality and that relatability, and that honesty,
I mean, because with his first movie there, Reservoir Dogs, I mean, that was kind of the first time he did this style of nonlinear stuff. But
it's his first movie ever. Yeah.
Yeah, but with Pulp Fiction, I feel like he took that and he perfected it there.
Right.
And he made the character moments deeper. Like, I still love Reservoir Dogs, but, with Pulp Fiction, I feel like everything was deeper. He just knew what he was doing more.
Exactly. All right, so we are going to be moving on now to Quiz Show, which was a first watch for me and a rewatch for Chad. Chad has seen all these before. But yeah, I had never seen Quiz Show. So Chad, tell us a little bit about Quiz Show.
Yeah. Quiz Show, directed by Robert Redford, written by Paul Attanasio, cinematography by Michael Bellhouse, music by Mark Isham. I've heard of most of, really none of those people except for Robert Redford. Right. The film chronicles the 21 quiz show scandals of the 1950s, the rise and fall of popular contestant Charles Van Doren after the fixed loss of Herb Stempel, and congressional investigator Richard Goodwin's subsequent probe. David Paymer plays Dan Enright, and Hank Azaria plays Albert Friedman as the producers of 21. And then Martin Scorsese plays Geritol executive
Nice little
Martin
role there.
Rittenhome. And I forgot to say, Charles Van Doren is played by Ray Fine, and Herb Stempel is John Turturro.
Yeah.
A lot of great performances there. Sorry, I still have some more. When Robert Redford first saw 21 in the late 1950s, he was in his early 20s taking art and acting classes in New York City, the same city in which Rockefeller Center, the show's studio, was located. He recalled when he first saw Charles Van Doren on the show. He said, "Watching him and the other contestants was irresistible. The actor in me looked at the show and felt I was watching other actors. It was too much to believe, but at the same time, I never doubted the show. I hadn't had evidence television could trick us, but the merchant mentality was already taking hold. And as we know now, there's little morality there." The filmmaker described the scandal as really the first in a series of scandals that have left us numbed, unsure of what or who to believe.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because I didn't know this was a true story until the very end.
Yeah.
And when it flashes across the screen, I'm like, oh, wait, so this actually happened. I thought it was because I had never heard of 21. It was before our time.
50s.
Yeah. But like, it was interesting because I saw it and I was like, this could be Jeopardy. This could be Deal or No Deal. And I'm thinking like modern day lens, like what would happen if one of those shows, it came out that it was rigged? And I made the Jeopardy comparison. It would be this crazy phenomenon, and I'm surprised we don't hear more about this. And I think it's because they do a good job explaining how easily stuff is brushed under the rug. And I thought it was really interesting to see kind of the ins and outs of how, television corporations deal with controversies like this, and how easy it is to really just make it disappear out of thin air. But then it's also interesting to see what happens when it comes out and when it becomes a fiasco. I thought it was really interesting. It was not your courtroom drama, not your typical courtroom drama, but it had elements of that. It was not like this crazy like thriller, but there were elements of thrills and like suspense. I really liked this film, and I think being a game show fan, like being a fan of game shows in general, like I just really dug how they really went into the ins and outs of that, and made a story. A game show is only like a 30-minute television broadcast, and to see how they were just able to, how so much was just packed into so little, and just how much spun out of control in context to just this one little game show. It was really, really, really cool to see. Chad, what are your thoughts on Quiz Show?
Well, what you were saying kind of reminded me of a quote from it, where you talked about like, the big business or whatever, getting away with it, things getting shoved under the rug. One of the final quotes of the movie was Dick Goodwin, the investigator, the lawyer. He's like, "I thought we were going to get television. The truth is, television is going to get us." And it's just like kind of the thing where it's like, it's too big to fail kind of a deal, where it's just like, how do you fight something so huge? It's kind of like an Amazon.com of today. It's NBC and Geritol, and it's like like this big television company, and the sponsor is huge. So there's people like Herb Stempel and Van Doren feel like they're kind of up against the world, and like I mean, I feel like the story is really great. I liked that. Basically, it's kind of there's kind of a betrayal at one point a little bit, because you see Herb and he's like this superstar, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get on a panel show. I'm gonna take television by storm. I know everything. I'm teaching my son to know everything." And basically, they're like, "Oh, this guy's kind of boring now. We need to get a new face in there." And so basically, Herb has to make a choice. They're like, what won the best picture for 1955? And he's like, "It's Marty. I've seen Marty 1,000 times." They're like, "You're gonna say On the Waterfront, though." And he's like, "What? No, I know it's Marty. No, that's so easy. No one's gonna even believe that I wouldn't know it's Marty." And he's kind of right, because the lawyer's like, "That's such an easy question to lose on."
In the context of that time, it was a few years prior.
Oh no, don't do that. Not Marty. I saw Marty 3 times. The best picture from 2 years ago, and I don't know it.
It'd be like asking a few years ago, like, what won the Oscar in 2016? And we know that's the big, Moonlight, La La Land moment. Like, I know it's Moonlight, but it'd be like if you said it was Green Book, knowing that was much more recent than than Moonlight. Like, it's one of those scenarios where, like, it's common. It was common sense for that time. So to see, him have that question be the question, like they couldn't have made it a harder question. But I think because they
Right.
wanted the audience to kind of play along and be like, no, it's
Mhm.
Marty. They wanted that reaction.
Yeah. Mhm.
I honestly think what you were saying with a betrayal. I think there's also a betrayal on the audience later when you find out that Herb was also getting answers because
That was the betrayal I was going to talk
yeah.
about. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But
No,
when,
go ahead.
when Herb when Herb is answering this question and he loses, you feel for him. But then
Yeah.
later when you find out that he was in the same position as Van Buren where they were giving him all the answers, it's like or Van Doren, sorry, Van
Yeah.
Buren. Van Doren where he was getting all the answers, it's like, oh well, like who do we root for here? And then it becomes later that we root for the people who are investigating it more than
Yeah.
the players themselves, because every player almost has gone through this and is guilty
Mhm.
of it. And it really questions, morality. And I think it's an interesting way of doing it where you reveal it later on. You get everyone on board with these characters and then they betray the audience and say, nope, this guy got the answers too. And it's kind of the same thing that the quiz show itself did. It made fans root for a certain person only for them to lose the game. And then you'd have to root for someone else. And, you'd get a new rooting interest. It's the same thing that the movie does. It mirrors the actual quiz show itself. And I really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, I actually think Rob Morrow, who plays Dick Goodwin,
Mhm.
is kind of the best character and best like one of the best actors in the movie.
For sure.
You kind of end up following him, like you don't. He's kind of like a side character for like a little bit of it, where he's just you just see scenes with him and I guess his wife or his girlfriend or something, and they're just sitting there like, oh, Marty, and he just can't get over the fact that such an easy question.
Right.
And you end up following him later on, and you leave Herb, you leave Van Doren, and you start following him, and then you're just so intrigued. Like, is he going to be able to get them? Like, what evidence does he have? Is he goes to talk to Herb, and Herb doesn't immediately say, "Oh, because they gave me the answers too." And then he says it so like everyone can hear it because he's insane apparently,
Mhm.
not trying to besmirch the real guy, but this
Yeah.
character he's just shouting out loud because he's so angry that they screwed him over. But you're like, did they screw you? You just did the same thing Van Doren
Right.
did. So
Exactly.
like you're both kind of implicated in this whole scheme. Like you didn't do the right thing. You took the easy way out to make money and get fame, and it just feels like, yeah, you really can't root for anybody but the investigator. So
Mhm. And I do think because the rooting interests slowly slip away as the movie goes on, the end, it does start to drag out a little bit toward the end, for me at least, the pacing. But I do think in the end they do stick the landing well, where they basically say, like, they basically tell you there are consequences to the actions, and it's not necessarily like jail or a fine. It's just reputation consequences. Like, this is your reputation now. Van Doren's reputation is ruined now.
Yeah.
And I think it's just very, very interesting. It was a lot of fun watching this for the first time.
yeah, he loses
Yep.
his job.
Yep.
And you could just see the disappointment in his parents' face, and just not just disappointment, but they're upset. But then they're just like, we're with him, but like, oh, this happened. You just see the defeated look in their face, especially the mom.
Definitely.
And finally, when the dad, because he can't tell his dad, he's so ashamed of himself. And I just feel like the characters are so well written in the movie that you feel for them, but then you're like, okay, so it's just like the whole thing. You can see that, because the producers, they're corrupted from the start. They just, this is their only thing, and this is how they're going to do it. This is how they're going to keep Geritol, I guess. And but with Ray Fiennes' character, you see him corrupted. He comes in, he's just this teacher. His dad's famous or whatever, famous professor, and then he comes in and he's like, I'm not going to do the wrong thing. And, they're like, well, what about, then they're just trying to talk him into it slowly, corrupting him. And then by the end, he's so ashamed of himself. And then at first he wants to hide it. And then, later he just like, he ends up admitting it in this like prepared statement for the court.
I have deceived my friends, and I have millions of them.
Most of the jury, the people hearing, they're like, that was a really beautiful statement. And then the one guy's like, why should we give you praise for telling the truth? That's what a decent person would do in the first place.
Right.
So, and I just feel like I don't know who I am on that panel. I don't know if I'm that guy, or if I'm like,
yeah,
I'm glad you actually did the right thing in the end, because we all make bad choices. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one last thing before we move on to the last movie, there is one cast member that I have to shout out. and that is my dad. My dad is in Quiz Show. He's not a cast member in the fact that he has lines, but he is an extra in the movie. I'll pull up the shot now. This is the shot of Ray Fiennes' character, Van Doren, coming into his classroom after he's won. All the students are there. If you see, there's a guy kind of by the door who's doing this weird, awkward shoulder lean there. That is my father.
That's
so
Mr. Randazzo?
Yeah, Mr. Randazzo. Jeff is there. He's doing the lean. We always laugh and we say, too much lean, almost like he's almost too scared of the of Ray Fiennes coming in the door. He's struck by stardom and he's leaning because he's pretty close to Ray Fiennes there. He's a good few feet away. So
your dad did not know this, but he was really close to Voldemort at that point.
Right, yeah. I mean, my dad's scar on his forehead was hurting when
and the guy from Schindler's List. So
yes, yeah, which was interesting because I asked him. I said, "Did you know he was this big star when you saw this movie?" And he said, "No, because they filmed it in 1993 before Schindler's List came out."
Oh, wow.
So they filmed it. Schindler's List came out afterwards, and then he's like, "Oh my god, that's the guy from Quiz Show." Quiz Show came out, and then the year later he did The English Patient. So it's like. It's really interesting to see how Ray Fiennes wasn't this huge star, at least not to my dad. And Schindler's List hadn't come out when they filmed this. So, yeah, there he is one more time. The guy leaning, that is my dad. That's Jeff Randazzo. So, Dad, there's a little shout out. It was fun because I was watching it earlier and I had to pause. I was like, which one are you again? And he was like the one leaning at the door. I was like, oh, you're. Yeah, so so now moving on to I think actually my dad's favorite movie and one of your favorite movies, Chad, one of my favorite movies, The Shawshank Redemption. And this is the last movie that was nominated for Best Picture. We'll get into at the very end what nominees it was up for. But I think there's a lot to talk. Oh, you're wearing a Shawshank shirt. Great. There's a lot to talk about Shawshank because it doesn't have the same legacy as these other movies. But Chad, why don't you start us off with Shawshank?
All right. The Shawshank Redemption, directed by Frank Darabont, written by Frank Darabont, cinematography by, let's all praise, Roger Deakins.
Yes.
Music by Thomas Newman. The Shawshank Redemption is a 1994 American drama film written and directed by Frank Darabont, based on the 1982 Stephen King novella Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption. It tells the story of banker Andy Dufresne, played by Tim Robbins, who was sentenced to life in Shawshank State Penitentiary. Actually, it's 2 life sentences for the murders of his wife and her lover, despite his claims of innocence. Over the following 2 decades, he befriends a fellow prisoner, contraband smuggler Ellis Red Redding, played by Morgan Freeman, and becomes instrumental in a money laundering operation led by the prison warden Samuel Norton, played by Bob Gunton.
Yeah.
Darabont purchased the film rights to King's story in 1987, but development did not begin until 5 years later when he wrote the script over an 8-week period. 2 weeks after submitting the script to Castle Rock Entertainment, Darabont secured a $25 million budget to produce The Shawshank Redemption, which started pre-production in January 1993. While the film is set in Maine, principal photography took place from June to August 1993, almost entirely in Mansfield, Ohio, within the Ohio State Reformatory serving as the eponymous penitentiary. The project attracted many stars at the time for the role of Andy, including Tom Hanks, actually, Tom Cruise, and Kevin Costner. Interesting. I'm glad they went the direction they went.
Yeah,
definitely. So this was not. This was actually a bomb.
Yeah, that's what
and it was
indicating
not.
earlier, yeah.
It was not like as beloved as stuff like Forrest Gump and Pulp Fiction at the time. And many reasons were cited for its failure, including competition from films such as Pulp Fiction and Forrest Gump, the general unpopularity of prison films, and something we may talk about later, its lack of female characters.
Yes.
And even the title, which was considered to be confusing for audiences, The Shawshank Redemption.
I guess because if you don't know what Shawshank is, you don't understand.
And this was also in 2015, the United States Library of Congress selected this film for preservation in the National Film Registry.
Cool. I definitely, first and foremost, the absence of female characters. When you're making a movie about a male prison, it's hard to obviously have other characters come into play. Obviously, those are issues that we've seen a lot throughout movie history in general. And I think, the 90s should have been going a little bit more progressive, but really the only movie here that has a lot of lead female roles, Four Weddings and a Funeral and Forrest Gump. The other two, Uma Thurman, is the lead of Pulp Fiction in terms of females. But I think
there's like 3 in that movie.
Yeah, exactly. There's not many roles for women in these movies. And I think This one is a little different because it all takes place in the prison, and it's a male prison, so there's really nothing you can do about it. So this one case, I'm willing to almost kind of let it slide. The quiz show, lack of women is a little. You could have added more women characters in that, more prominent women characters in that. But this one, it's a little easier to excuse because of that. But again, if you're trying to appeal to a wide audience, a prison movie with a bunch of dudes isn't everyone's cup of tea, and it's not kid friendly. So it's one of those movies that I can see why it bombed. But I'm glad it had a legacy. It's number 1 on IMDb. It's been number 1 on IMDb for so long, audience rating, and it's because I think it is timeless. It really could be set in any era, could appeal to anyone. I honestly forget how long Andy Dufresne is in prison for. It's like 19 years or something, because they don't do the best job about showing how time has passed because the aging of the actors isn't as noticeable. But yeah, I think this is a timeless movie. It doesn't have to be set in it doesn't have to appeal to a certain era or certain period of time, where like Forrest Gump, it's like very much capturing this moment in history. Whereas Shawshank, it's like, you could set this in any era and it could kind of be the same. I mean, there's obviously the addition of technology, which might have played a part, but it is a really timeless film. So Chad, tell me why it is one of your favorite movies. Obviously, I mean, knowing you, I know that, and your shirt suggests it too.
Well, I mean, I am a big Stephen King fan. I don't know if I've actually read this novella, to be honest.
It's very good.
But yeah, I mean, this has anybody written as many just like timeless, iconic and just memorable stories as Stephen King. Like, he's just one of the greatest writers of all time, in my opinion. But Shawshank, Stephen King is a horror writer, and he writes Shawshank, and it's like, well, is that a horror? Kind of. I mean, it just depends. Like, do you think being an innocent man, being locked up for like almost half your life, or maybe a third of your life, horror? Kind of. I mean, but it's not like a typical horror. But it's just like that this kind of shows like the writing of Stephen King in particular, where he can branch off from horror and still make just like great stories. And I think this one is one of his best of all time. And I think what Frank Darabont did with the screenplay of this movie, it's just like, I'm sitting here watching this movie and I'm just like, holy shit. Just like for me, like every scene fits, every piece of dialogue means something to me. And, I just feel like just the way the story progresses, and like, I feel like it does kind of do a pretty good job. I don't know about the best of, portraying time passing and stuff. Like, you see Brooks's crow grow up, and just like that one scene with Brooks, like that whole part with Brooks just floors me.
Heartbreaking. And
just especially, it's not even when he hangs himself. That part, I always go, I always like, I know he's going to do it. That said, I know like when kind of the build up to it a lot is like really what gets me. It's like when he's just like sitting there feeding all those birds, and he's like, I hope my bird comes back.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes after work, I go to the park and feed the birds. I keep thinking Jake might just show up and say hello.
He's just like, I hope he's happy wherever he is. And I'm just like, oh my God, like the only friend this dude had in the world. It's like the relationship between man and bird. And I'm just like, it's just that part's just so great. But just like what really gets me is just like this movie is just really about, you talk about a Man of Steel saying, that this stands for hope. It's like, that's what Shawshank stands for, is hope. It's just like, you end up in the worst situation imaginable, where you're an innocent man locked up forever. They gave him 2 life sentences, and he has pretty much no hope of getting out, even when they have the one guy come in and he's like, oh my God, I know who did it, and he confessed to me. And then the warden knows that this is true, and yet he ends up killing this guy, or having this guy killed, because he's like, well, I need Andy Dufresne. He does all this stuff for us. He knows all the ins and out of everything that I do, all of my schemes. He
couldn't afford to let him be in the free world. Yeah,
exactly.
And so it's like he's basically getting rid of anyone guilty by association, which is
pretty much, yeah.
The warden in that movie is the most villainous of all these movies, of a lot of those 90s movies. He's one of the greatest movie villains, because you can't stand him. I mean, you can't. He's evil. He is evil. Yeah. It's He's evil.
Yeah.
Sorry, keep going.
And, like,
There's
just
not
like-
much else to say about him. Yeah.
just like some of the biggest screw you to Andy Dufresne that this guy does. You're just like, holy shit. Like when you first meet him, he's like, you won't take the Lord's name in vain in this prison while I'm here, stuff like that. And it's like, cool, you're religious, all right, but like he just sets the tone there about like this corporal punishment, like, and then that's how they run the prison too, is they beat the first guy to death because he's just crying. The first thing that I would probably do when I'm in the prison, I wouldn't be an Andy Dufresne. I'd be that other guy that gets beaten to death because I'm like, I want my mom. I don't deserve to be here. You don't understand. And, Andy Dufresne, even though Red's like, he's going to end up being the whiniest person and he's stone cold. And like, I just love just the character of Andy Dufresne and, how that builds. And then he just ends up, inspiring hope in everybody with the beer, with the music. He plays the record. And then later, and like, I feel like in other films like Life is Beautiful, they kind of mirror these moments where they're like, let's give the hope to the hopeless. And, let's play this beautiful opera song. Even though the one guy says, couldn't you play some Hank Williams? But it's just like he inspires hope when Red is just like, kind of like, there's no hope here. That's going to hurt you. Hope is going to hurt you because, there is no hope. And then Andy's just basically like, there is hope. And, he says,
get busy living. You get busy dying.
The biggest line. Yeah. There's another part. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think Red's journey is also very interesting too, because from the beginning, I mean, it's Morgan Freeman. You can't look at Morgan Freeman and listen to Morgan Freeman and watch Morgan Freeman and say like, oh yeah, this guy deserves to be in prison. No, like he's already changed by the time we meet him.
Yep.
But the difference between him at the beginning of the movie and him at the end is at the beginning he's a changed man, but he doesn't have that hope. But at the end, he's still a changed man, but now he has this glimmer of hope. And when he finally gets out, that whole last moment is just so refreshing because, if you watch this guy this whole time, at least when Andy gets there, there's that question at the beginning where did he do it? Did he not do it? Morgan Freeman from the get-go, guilty or not, and I believe he is guilty, he's old enough now that he's learned from his mistakes and you kind of, already easily sympathize with him off the bat. So I think it's really interesting to see how their journeys change. And grow throughout the movie. And I will say, rewatching it, I rewatch it more for the second half where kind of these characters kind of have the peak of their growth and watching how these stories resolve with Brooks' story, which is heartbreaking. And then, of course, Andy's escape and, what happens to the warden and what happens to Red and how he gets out. Like, I watch it more for the ending now, whereas the stuff before, it's like the prison violence and stuff, it's been done in other movies. We've seen it. It hasn't been done as well as this, obviously, but, like, I don't always like look forward obviously to rewatching that as much and rewatching it over and over and over again. I'm like, okay, I've seen the beginning, I've seen the lead up, but it's really that last half where everyone starts to feel that hope and then he escapes and then the aftermath of that escape. That's why I rewatched Shawshank, and it's for those moments. I know, Chad, you love the whole thing, so
and I absolutely do. And you see some of these like really cool like mirroring things where you see Brooks get out and he goes through what he goes through. And then you see Red get out and he goes through a lot of similar things. He works at the same place and these people are so institutionalized and hopeless that they're just like, they're as soon as they get out, they're like, how do I get back in? Because I'm safe there. I get my food. People take care of me. This world is scary. I haven't been in this world forever. I can really only get this shitty job that I don't care about. And that mirrors kind of a lot of what goes on today, even today. That's why this is such a timeless movie. And it's still, you relate to like people in prison today are still going through stuff like that. When, you have people in jail for a very long time for minor offenses like marijuana. And then if that gets legalized and they're still there. But anyways, politics aside.
Yeah. That's what I was saying earlier with the timelessness. Like this could be set at any period of time. The themes are universal and timeless. You're not. I think Pulp Fiction's another example of like it's set in a specific time, but you can enjoy it at any point. Forrest Gump, I love it, but it is a very specific what periods of history it's covering. Whereas this, it's like it is a specific time period, but like you really could see this today. This whole corruption of the prison system. Yeah.
And then there's the whole other thing too of I don't know if this was intentional, but a lot of people have like thought that Andy Dufresne is kind of like a Christ figure in this movie, where like
definitely.
he comes in, he inspires hope in everybody. And, you know, it's like I think like what they said, like with the beer scene or whatever, where he gives everybody beer, and, you know, that's all he wants for helping the guy with his taxes. And that's kind of like a Last Supper kind of deal.
Yeah. So we've covered all 5 movies. Like that is,
Mhm.
those are the 5 movies that we got. And, as you said, as we've said, there are ups, downs, but overall there's a very consistency. Sorry, let me rephrase. There's a great consistent quality to all of them. Like these 5 movies, for the most part, have stood the test of time. Maybe some a little bit more than others, but all in all, I mean, they're all very well regarded today. We both like them. There's not a movie, I think, between the two of us that we didn't like. There were issues I had with some movies over others, but I don't dislike any of these. And I think that just shows how strong 1994 is. Because a lot of years I can pick out one dud. I'm like, that's a dud.
Yeah,
that's a dud. But this one, I didn't feel that.
I felt that way too.
So I'm going to go through and just talk about what nominees and what wins these movies had, because I was going to do it after each movie, but I think it's good to talk about them all in all. So first, Four Weddings and a Funeral only got 2 nominations, Best Original Screenplay and Best Picture, which is interesting because movies nowadays, you don't see a lot of movies just getting, you know, Best Picture and then one other thing. Usually you'll see it pick up some technical awards, pick up some acting awards. Four Weddings and a Funeral didn't. It got 2 nominations and it didn't win. Quiz Show picked up 4 nominations, did not win. It was up for Best Picture, Best Director for Robert Redford, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Supporting Actor for Paul Schofield, who plays Van Doren's father. So I think it's interesting that SAG went for John Turturro as blanking on his name. Help me out, Chad.
Herb Stemple. Herb Stemple.
Thank you so much. Again, Chad's got the character names. I've got the actor names. John Turturro's character was nominated at the SAGs, but here at the Oscars we see Paul Schofield's character nominated. Also did not win any awards. Shawshank Redemption was up for 7 nominations. Again, did not win any of them. Best Picture, Best Actor for Morgan Freeman, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Original Score, Best Sound, Best Cinematography, Best Film Editing. Then we get to the 2 movies that actually did win something at the Academy Awards. Pulp Fiction was nominated for 7. Only won 1. It was the winner for Best Original Screenplay. It was also nominated for Best Picture, Best Director for Quentin Tarantino, Best Actor for John Travolta, Best Supporting Actor for Samuel L. Jackson, Best Supporting Actress for Uma Thurman, and Best Film Editing. So again, a lot of acting nominations. And then Forrest Gump, nominated for 13 nominations and 6 wins. So it won for Best Picture, Best Director for Robert Zemeckis, Best Actor for Tom Hanks, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Film Editing, and Best Visual Effects. It was nominated as well for Supporting Actor for Gary Sinise, Best Original Score, Sound Effects Editing, Best Sound, Best Art Direction, which is production design by our standards today, Best Cinematography, and Best Makeup. So you see, this year had a lot of great movies, but really Forrest Gump is the only movie that swept. It's the only one that won more than one award out of those 5 nominees. The Lion King and Ed Wood and Speed all won 2 awards apiece in technical categories, but those were the only 4 movies, Speed, Ed Wood, Lion King, and Forrest Gump, to win multiple Oscars, and Forrest Gump and Pulp Fiction are the only 2 of the 5 to win any Oscars, which I think is very interesting because we see in Oscars today, they tend to spread the wealth a little bit more, whereas here it was Forrest Gump swept in nominations and wins, and everything else was kind of left in the dust. So I think it really goes to show the voting body just seemed to all be in unison and all congregate toward a certain film. So I think it's time now to rank these. We've each ranked them, and we're gonna go one at a time. I'm gonna do my 5, Chad will do his 5, then I'll do my 4, he'll do his 4. We're just gonna say our rankings, and then at the end, if we have anything to comment on each other's rankings or our own, explain why we did what we did, we will, and then we'll come up with our combined Best Picture winner. How's that sound, Chad?
That sounds great. I actually tried to figure out what your ranking is.
Let's see if you can.
I'm interested to see how close I get.
Yeah, let me know at the end.
Sure.
All right, so I will go first. My number 5 is Four Weddings and a Funeral.
Okay.
Chad, what's your number 5?
My number 5 is Quiz Show.
Okay. My number 4 is Quiz Show.
My number 4 is Four Weddings and a Funeral.
Okay, so there we go. It's the same 4 and 5. My number 3 is The Shawshank Redemption. Give me that hard stare. How can you be so obtuse? All right, so my number 3 is Forrest Gump. Okay, I think I know. This is what I predicted was going to happen. My number 2 is Pulp Fiction.
My number 2 is Pulp Fiction.
And that means my number 1 is Forrest Gump, which means Chad.
The Shawshank Redemption.
So we're in an interesting predicament that I predicted would happen before
Yes.
the show started. I knew that was your ranking. I predicted it. Was that what you thought my ranking would be?
I had I got everything right except that I thought you would put Quiz Show last.
Okay. Yeah, no, I really liked Quiz Show as a game show person, as a courtroom drama fan, and as a fan of my dad who's in the movie. I put Quiz Show slightly above Four Weddings. I just think Four Weddings is good in its genre, but I think against these other 4 films, it just doesn't have the same effect on me. It didn't stand out as much. And again, like, it's a good rom-com. I think it's a little bit better as a comedy than a romance because some of those character storylines aren't fully developed to me. Again, for the top 3, it's so hard because those are all 3 masterpieces I've watched so many times. Shawshank, it's just because I'd rather watch the last hour of Shawshank than the whole thing of Shawshank over again. And Pulp Fiction is just so iconic, but Forrest Gump has that emotional tie to me.
Mhm.
That's why I put it at number 1. So Chad, do you want to explain your ranking at all?
Sure. Yeah. I put, Four Weddings and a Funeral and Quiz Show do kind of like interchange a little bit for me, I think, because they're the ones because these are our favorites. These are the ones that I've kind of like, spent the least amount of time with.
Right.
But Four Weddings and a Funeral, I felt like was the more enjoyable watch because it was so funny. Even though, I don't know, Quiz Show may be the better movie overall. I don't know, but I really enjoy watching Four Weddings and a Funeral. It's one of my favorite rom-coms now. So that, that's why I put those 2, 4, and 5. So with Forrest Gump, I also grew up watching this, and I do love this movie quite a bit. And actually, like, my wife has an interesting roller coaster effect with this, where she started where she's like, oh, I don't like Forrest Gump, and she had only at that point seen scenes from it, and I'm like, you got to watch the whole movie with me. I finally got her to sit down, and then when we got to that one part, I'm not a smart man. That part, she's like, all right, it's a great movie, and then. Recently, I'm like, oh, you want to watch Forrest Gump? She's like, I don't like Forrest Gump. I'm like, you did. Why? Damn it. Okay. But the reason I put Forrest Gump is I just don't think that the writing is at the same level as Shawshank and Pulp Fiction for me. And Forrest Gump, there's certain parts, like the whole is fantastic, but I feel like there's certain parts I was kind of rolling my eyes at a little bit.
Okay. Yeah.
Where it's like, the parts that are like Elvis, where he learned how to dance because of Forrest dance. And then, you got him showing his butt to Lyndon B. Johnson and him going, oh, or something like that. Like, like what?
I think it's funny. I don't
It
know.
is funny, but and then the one like most egregious for me is the John Lennon part where it's like, why would you have John Lennon just sitting there talking in his own song lyrics? That would never happen. Like, if you're trying to do like realism for the movie, at least a little bit, I'm like, those parts I feel like have to be strong. The only really cool part is apparently a lot of that stuff, especially the stuff with Lieutenant Dan's leg, was done by ILM or whatever, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So that was like an early thing for them. And, so a lot of it was probably for the time technically really good, but now I think it's quite dated.
No, it's fine.
And so I just feel like that's all. I just feel like go ahead.
We will talk over each other. Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, yeah, again, this is totally personal preference. So, like, obviously there are things that you might find that you can roll your eyes at that I can look past, and vice versa. And that's just the beauty of film as a subjective art form.
Yeah, and so with Pulp Fiction, I don't know. It's weird because like I've always been a big Forrest Gump defender. I'm like, no, that one definitely is Best Picture material. And, it's weird because it's like, I feel like those top 3 all totally deserve to win.
In any other year, those are the winners,
Yes.
I mean, if Pulp Fiction comes out in 95 and if Pulp Fiction comes out in 95 and Shawshank comes out in 96, you get Forrest Gump, Pulp Fiction, Shawshank winning every year. It's just unfortunate that they were all in the same year.
And I do think Shawshank, though, kind of got like an unfair rap a little bit where it was kind of shoved under the rug, Quiz Show. Where, I just feel like the popularity of the two became a kind of a popularity contest. And I feel like Forrest Gump won that. And I am never going to trash Forrest Gump because I also really love Forrest Gump. But when I'm doing a show like this and I'm like, I got to rank these,
Right.
I'm going to nitpick stuff, and I just
Right.
couldn't find anything. Maybe it's just my nostalgia and my, well, I
That's
mean, I
fair,
also have
yeah.
nostalgia for Forrest Gump, but maybe it's just my deep love for Shawshank that just made it to where I'm like, I can't find any flaws with this.
And
Every
that's fine.
line is
Yeah.
brilliant.
Mhm.
And I feel like it also has more likable characters and stuff than Pulp Fiction does. So
Yeah.
that's
All right.
why it won for me.
Nice. So those are our rankings. So I think if we combine the rankings, all three of those big three are all tied now. So Pulp Fiction is our number 2. So we each have a different number 1. So we can either award our best picture to our combined number 2, or we can flip a coin between our number 1s. What do you think?
I'm okay with the coin flip.
All right, so we're going to flip between Forrest Gump and Shawshank as to what will be our Picture This Best Picture winner for 1994. As you can see, my screen
Do I
does not have
call
Siri on it.
something or
Yeah, what do you want?
heads?
All right. Siri, flip a coin, please.
Yeah.
So Shawshank Redemption is our first ever Best Picture winner here on Picture This. So Shawshank wins. In the interest of time, we are going to give you our Best Actor and Best Actress, and we have like a moment or scene linked up to it. We won't really elaborate on that scene. We'll just kind of give what the scene is. Okay, so my Best Actor that I chose, because it didn't win Best Picture, I'll pick him here for Best Actor. Tom Hanks is what I am awarding my Best Actor prize to. I just love what he does with the role. My favorite moment is actually one Chad talked about earlier, is he smart?
Is he smart?
He's very smart. He's one of the smartest in his class.
And that moment is the one moment that every time I watch Forrest Gump will make me cry every time. So Chad, who is your Best Actor that you are awarding?
Tim Robbins.
Wow, okay. For
Yeah,
Shawshank.
Andy Dufresne.
And what is your moment?
It's the scene with the record player when he's playing it, and then just that moment when all the ward and everybody's like, "You open this door."
Open it up! Dufresne, open this door!
And then he's just like, he's about to like turn it off and pull the needle and go open it, and then he's like, he overreaches and he turns it up and he just stares at him. And you're like, oh my God, this dude is insane, but he's the best. And then it's the other scene where after he's been in solitary for so long, and he's sitting there talking to Red, and this is the moment where he gives the line, "Get busy living or get busy dying," is because Red's just like, I don't think we're ever going to get out of here, stuff like that. And then this is the moment where he also tells him about Zihuatanejo, Mexico, and what he wants to do. And he has his mindset, and he's going to do this and stuff. And I just love that dialogue between them and that relationship between them. It's so strong.
The big oak tree at the north end. It's like something out of a Robert Frost poem.
All right, so Chad, since I went first for Best Actor, you'll go first for Best Actor next month. Sorry. But who is your Best Actress that you are awarding the prize to? And what is your moment for her?
This is really hard. I know there's not that many to choose from. There's like 4 really big ones. This was really hard, but I ended up going with Uma Thurman, and it wasn't who I thought I was going to go with, but I did go with Uma Thurman as Mia Wallace. And what
is your moment?
My scene, well, it was hard because I'm like, there's kind of like a whole scene,
right?
So
it's more of her aura throughout the whole.
Yeah, so I
that movie.
basically chose the scene in Jackrabbit Slims where she just has an extended conversation with John Travolta. And they're just talking about her show and the milkshake and the burger and don't you hate uncomfortable silences and just all this stuff that doesn't really seem like it's very plot driven, but some of it kind of is. And then they have that intimate kind of like dance. And
yeah,
I remember
the dance is amazing.
But when Pierre found work, the little money coming worked out where?
I remember my brother-in-law or somebody saying something like, this was what a lot of people from like the 70s were like, like loving, because it's like John Travolta dancing again from like back in Saturday Night Fever and stuff like this. So it's a big moment. So I just feel like, yeah, it was a really nice scene.
All right, so my Best Actress, and we're not doing supporting, we're just doing actor and actress. We're encompassing it into one. My Best Actress, I'm sticking with the Forrest Gump train. It's Robin Wright for me. My favorite moment for her is after he finds her playing with the guitar at the music place, and afterwards when she's like, dude, you gotta do your own thing, and he tells her he's going to Vietnam, and she's like, she almost is about to get in the car, and then she says, wait, hold on one second. She walks up to him, she like grabs him, and she's like, listen, So anything happens, you run.
Just if you're ever in trouble, don't try to be brave. You just run, okay? Just run away.
There's that moment of like change from this guy's got to just leave me alone to, oh shit, he's probably going to die. It's that immediate turn to me that is just really, really good. I mean, all she does in that movie is great. But yeah, those are our picks. So our best picture, we're going to rattle it off one more time. Our best picture is The Shawshank Redemption. Our best actors are Tom Hanks in Forrest Gump and Tim Robbins in The Shawshank Redemption. And our best actresses are Uma Thurman in Pulp Fiction and Robin Wright in Forrest Gump. Chad, that was 1994. I know we went probably an hour longer than we thought we were going to go, but we had a lot of great
I'm fine
stuff
with
to
it.
discuss. I'm fine with it too. As long as you guys are open to watching it, we'll do it. Next episode, we might need to spend a little less time talking about each movie because we have 8 movies to talk about next week, because our next show is going to be in line with the 2020 Oscars, which are taking place obviously in 2021. April 25th, we will be seeing the Oscars, and then a few days after that, you will get our episode where we break down those 8 movies that are nominated and do the same thing, break each one down, talk about the movies that we thought might have been iconic and should be in a conversation that didn't get nominated. We will give our best actor and actress prize. We will rank and find a commonality between the two. Those movies, and I will read them off now in case you want to watch them in prep. A lot of you guys will be watching them because it is going to be falling right around the time that the Oscars are. The Father, Judas and the Black Messiah, Mank, Minari, Nomadland, Promising Young Woman, Sound of Metal, and The Trial of the Chicago 7. So those are the 8 movies we'll be talking about on the next episode. This was 1994. Chad, really quick, where can they find you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I try to do a lot of the Fan League trivia stuff. You know, I try to rank things on Letterboxd. I'm rarely on Twitter, but maybe I'll start more. I'm usually like Chadwick_Webb, something like that. Yep. Yeah. And then on here.
Yep. And yeah, you can find me at Twitter and at Letterboxd at Dylan_Randazzo. You can find me all over the Dill Pickle Movie Network. I've been so amazed at all the guests I've had doing shows. This is the last of our 4 shows that we do on the channel to debut. We had Marvelous Movie Mondays with Kelsey, which is a blast. The Great American Film Off with Crosby, which is amazing and a lot of fun. Frame Wreck with Matt Chapman, which is awesome. And then this show, Picture This with Chad. It has been really fun. Getting to do these long form shows that aren't little reviews squashed into 5 minutes, but longer open discussion forums where we can really talk about each movie in depth. Chad, this was a lot of fun. I can't wait to do it next time.
So much fun, dude.
All right. So we'll see you next time for 2020 on Picture This.